Today's podcast is brought to you by Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance. Accidents happen. Without the right coverage from the right insurance company, damage to your automobile can be a real financial hit. That's why Kentuckians appreciate the competitive rates and personal service they get from Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance. When the unexpected happens, count on us to help you get back on the road. To request a free quote, find your local KFB insurance agent at mykfbagent.com. Kentucky Farm Bureau, big on commitment. Hey, Matt, how's it going?
It's going good. We have a great guest today. I think everyone should appreciate who he represents. He represents a group of farmers that bring us delicious things like cheeseburgers and T-bone steaks and all that brisket. What else? I mean, all kinds of great things. So we have a man from the Cattleman Association today. Pretty excited about this.
Oh yeah, he is a great person for the organization. But you're right, we end this thing and he makes sure you're hungry by the end of it and reminds you to eat some beef. So whether it's a tailgate, whether it's the chili supper, I mean, we're getting a little cooler weather. I think it is prime eat beef season. So
is there a non-eat beef season? I mean, we make a reason for it all year. You know, July 4th, cheeseburger. You know, like we always try to find a reason to eat a.
We really do. We redeclare it regularly. It's roast in the winter, but really we're just eating beef all the time.
Can always find a way. So, yeah. I think folks are gonna like him. He's just a great advocate. You know, one of those people that should be doing the role he's in. Just a well-spoken guy, really understands his industry and loves it.
And you didn't get to ask any dumb questions today. He's a good teacher.
I think I got everything.
I mean,
I kept going. I'm gonna ask a question. No, he explains.
I mean,
it
he was
to
on
even
it.
Me.
That may mean that you're equal with the granddaughters. He did say he's teaching his granddaughters right now. So, I mean, that may put you there. But
there's no chance. I think they know a lot more than me.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, you guys will really like Jeff. We won't hold you back anymore. Without further ado, I'm Renee Carrico.
And I'm Matt Hilton.
And this is Between the Rows. Well, hey, Matt, how's it going?
It's going well. We have a great guest on the phone today that we're really excited to talk to.
Yeah, I got a buddy out in West Kentucky. How is Jeff Pettit today?
Awesome.
Well, welcome to Between the Rows. We wanted to get to know you. So I don't know you real close. So tell me a little about yourself. I want to get to know you. Tell me about yourself, your background in agriculture.
Okay. Well, I don't know how far you want to start, but I was basically born on the farm down in North Alabama. Both of my grandparents were involved in agriculture, had dairy on one side and beef cattle operation on the other, and just kindly grew up in that atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have probably had cattle on my place basically since the day I was born. There was probably a few years back in my early married life where we had gotten out of the business for a few years, but the addiction drew me back in. And, I guess I got tired of not having mud to wade in the wintertime feeding cows and all the joys that go along with that. So, now, Renee, your dad would tell me if I was being smart and doing it right, I wouldn't be wading mud in the wintertime feeding cows. But I'm sorry, I'm a slow learner. So kind of do it the hard way, I guess he would say.
There you go. Well, don't let him fool you. He's wading in mud just as much as he ever has because all of his kids moved off. So you probably know how that feels too. So he's wading in more mud than he ever did in those old meetings.
Oh, okay. He didn't tell us that part.
Yeah, he's a big do as I say, not as I do kind of guy. Do as I say, not as I do. No, I love hearing about it, Jeff. Tell us about your operation now, because so we've had some cow-calf guys, but they've been commercial, and we've had some guys that sell meat, finish their own, but we've not had kind of a seed stock guy. So tell the listeners kind of what you guys raise and how you guys market your cattle.
Sure. So we're in the registered Red Angus seed stock business where we raise registered Red Angus cattle with the goal of selling those cattle either as females to go back in someone else's herd that wants to raise feed stock, or we will be selling bulls that will go back either into seed stock operations or commercial operations for someone that wants Red Angus influence feeder cattle on their commercial operation. We also will sell some commercial cattle. Kindly, our first run when we go through and wean and process calves, no matter how good your genetics are, no matter how good your nutrition is or your year, you're going to have some that's just not good enough. And you know that early on to sell as seed stock replacements. So we typically will wean and process those calves and sell those at weaning time. And we also do a small run of freezer beef calves each year as well. So we kind of sell a little of all of it, I guess you'd say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of neat stats about Kentucky that I think people are unaware of. So even maybe some of our farmers, we have some interesting beef production in Kentucky. What are some things that maybe people don't understand about how big of a industry it is here in Kentucky?
So speaking from the cattle industry, I think one thing that catches a lot of people by surprise is Kentucky is the largest cow-calf producing state east of the Mississippi River. We have the largest cattle population in this part of the country. We also have the second largest Cattlemen's Association in the U.S. behind Texas Southwest Cattle Raisers Association. So, I think that's pretty unique. And although our herd size of the average cow-calf operation in Kentucky is in that 30 to 35 range, we have a lot of those smaller farms throughout the state, which helps, put us in that position as being the largest cow-calf operation east of the Mississippi River. And, a lot of times when people think about large cow-calf numbers, they think about states like Florida that have big ranches and run thousands of head. But in total mass, we have more cattle numbers than Florida does. So.
Yeah, you talked about all the different small farms that are part of that. Like, what's the history? How did we get like that in Kentucky? Do you kind of know how that grew into that status?
So, Matt, no, I don't really know the history. Actually, I come to Kentucky in 1992. I'm originally from North Alabama, but I've lived in Kentucky longer than anywhere else in my life, so it's home. Yeah. But my wife was from Kentucky, and that's where we ended up settling after we'd been married a couple of years. But from what I do know, I think Kentucky had a lot of producers that run cattle, let's just say on the side or as a part of their operation. It wasn't their primary operation. You had a lot of tobacco farmers that, had a few cows. And over the years, I think with the buyout program, we've seen, maybe that number, the herd size tick up a little bit. More people kindly picked up some cattle, started running a few cattle. But we don't have a lot of the wide open spaces in the state of Kentucky that they have, say, in Wyoming or the Dakotas or something like that. It was a whole lot more smaller farms to begin with. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if that kind of makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't do that, Jeff. I think, and we're talking about my dad. For the listeners that don't know, I don't guess we've ever talked about him. Anyway, my dad's Kevin Laurent down in Princeton. He's a beef specialist down at the Princeton Research Center. He also moved to Kentucky in 91, and I always like to pick his brain. You and he have a very similar, Dave Maples might be very similar in the sense that you guys you got here right about the time tobacco settlement dollars started coming in. So when everyone talks about what the feedlots thought of Kentucky cattle back in the 90s, and then the total different attitude, we'll say, towards getting a truckload of Kentucky cattle, how does that, you've watched that happen. How's that been?
Mm-hmm. Very interesting you bring that up, because I was on a trip one time, and we were at Five Rivers Feedlot in Colorado, and the buyer was there that day, and they was talking about different cattle, and somehow or another the comment come up about those sorry Kentucky Tennessee calves that they always buy, and the high death loss. That was the highest death loss group of cattle that they bought anywhere. And, I think that come from a lot of co-mingled truckloads that they bought because you couldn't come to Kentucky or Tennessee at that time and probably buy a truckload of cattle from a single source place or operation. And, they weren't doing a whole lot to wean or precondition those calves and get them ready for the next phase in the supply chain. But when we left that meeting, I went up and was talking to the gentleman, and he said, I made that comment, but he said that has changed. Those cattle are getting better. They are something that we look to buy, and we've figured out how to manage them. But over the years, and I don't know that he really knew why, and we got to looking back, and as you said, that's kind of when the tobacco settlement funds come into existence. And a lot of those operators had the opportunity to get cost share dollars to go towards better genetics, better facilities, and things to improve their beef cattle operation as they diversified out of tobacco. And we have been blessed in the state of Kentucky, without question, through that program. And Kentucky cattle now have a whole different reputation than they did 20 years ago. So
yeah, exactly. I just think it's you tell me if you think different, but I think it's hard to find a producer that doesn't have a head chute, doesn't have a place to store their hay anymore in some of your larger cattle counties. And that used to be the holdup, is what I've always been told, is it's pretty hard to vaccinate calves unless you catch them on the ground. Right after she has her, it's going to be hard to get much in that calf if you don't have a head chute. And so now that we've got guys able to cost share that for over 20 years, it's just a different ballgame. Now it's more a matter of, can you find the time and do you have the labor source? And I know we've got aging farmers and aging herds and different things across the state, and that's probably a whole different topic on its own. But I think that that investment and people like you in the seed stock operation really being able to push your genetics and people having a little assistance to pay for the right kind, I think that's really helped. But now I think it's always interesting talking to the ones, though, that moved here as adults and watched the whole thing happen. I mean, you guys were kind of a front row seat to the whole change.
Well, I think we have been. And I think I'm going to say this, and it talks about genetics, but I'm just going to go back to the genetics and purchasing bulls and improving the herds. For a long time in the state of Kentucky, I think people had a problem realizing the importance of investing in good bulls. They had trouble seeing that as an investment, as they do out west. Those people see what the investment in a good herd sire does for their taking their cattle to the next level. And because of the herd size in the state of Kentucky, that was just such a huge investment that guys were having to make. It was just hard for them to do that prior to some of these cost share dollars. Now that cost share dollars have been brought into the equation and they have kind of gotten into a cycle and the practice of looking at EPDs, looking at performance data, and seeing how that helps their cow herd in terms of weaning weights and different things. It's become a little easier for them, I think, to understand, I don't just need to go to the sale barn and buy whatever somebody's brought in and dropped off the trailer this week to be the bull that's going to take and improve my herd for the next generation. So there's been a lot of education. Your dad and Dr. Burris and many others have worked tirelessly in ours to try to help producers throughout this state see the value in genetics and facilities and, all the things that come from the investments and from those cost share dollars.
With this being the largest state east of the Mississippi, what is the economic impact of that? That has to be pretty dramatic, and you've seen that growth through the years. How's that changed, and what's that impact today?
So you did tell me to be prepared on my stats, Matt, but our
roundabout,
I had that. It's big. It's big. I mean, the beef sector in the state of Kentucky, I've seen some of those statistics, here a few weeks ago, and I thought I had it here on my desk somewhere, but I don't. But we so when you ask that question, I also think about poultry and the role that Kentucky's played in poultry, and I think that the dollars of poultry for protein purposes in the state of Kentucky is higher than beef, but I think we're falling close behind there.
Mm-hmm.
But the number around 8 billion comes to mind, but I can't say if that's right or not. In what I remember for the state of Kentucky, and it's definitely a huge component of the ag revenue in the state, though.
Yeah, Jeff, so I'm going back on the production side a little bit. I'll give you an easier question. He hit you with economics. So it's all good. When it comes to calving, being a seed stock guy, you're selling heifers, you're selling bulls. Do you guys calve 2 different times of the year, spring and fall, or just one?
So currently we calve once a year as a whole. Our group of cattle we set up for fall calving. And we made that change back several years ago due to the weather conditions in the spring just seemed to be very difficult to manage calving in what most people call springtime calving. I call wintertime calving. So they'll start in January and February. And even, into early March, we can have a lot of mud and that causes a lot of health issues. And it just made a whole lot more sense to me if I could calve those cattle in cooler temperatures later in the fall, but on firm ground and with some good grass underneath them. So that was a choice that we made, and seems to have worked out pretty well for us so far.
So are y'all calving now, or is it coming up?
Yeah, I think we should have our first one on the ground any day now.
Awesome. Okay, good deal. We're hearing good things my end of the state over in Springfield, so I'm hoping y'all have a good. That is the only pro, Matt, of no rain, is that at least there is no mud to calve in, but there are very few pros to a lack of rain. How's the weather been y'all's way, Jeff?
So I think what we have been, and right where we're at, we have been extremely blessed with rain all the way up to really about the 1st of August. Our grass had done well. Hay come off good, probably had a better second cutting of hay in early August than we had our first cutting. And but it was kind of like the second week there, it turned off dry, and we've kind of been hurting some ever since, but not as bad as other places. I was down in Katie's a couple weeks ago, and I mean, they were just really burned up down there. And fortunately, we haven't been quite in that situation, but some of the other parts of the state, I think over around the Danville area and through there, it's been very dry, and I've heard of people already having to start feeding hay and things of that nature. Matt, to answer your question, in 2022, the total value of beef production in Kentucky was approximately $1.3 billion.
Okay. You were Googling while also talking to us, weren't you? Is that what you were doing? That's impressive.
I had to find my information somewhere. I'm not going to tell you where I found it.
That was impressive. You didn't miss a beat telling us great stuff. So, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I can't imagine it's not, with that being a interesting piece of Kentucky, that it's not a huge impact. I mean, it's I see it when we do stories all over Kentucky. I mean, it seems like everywhere you go, there's everybody's got some cattle, and so I agree with that.
Somebody's told me that before. They said there's something in every single county that comes with ag, and it's a Farm Bureau office, beef cattle, and an extension office.
Right.
And they said that's the 3 things you can guarantee are going to be in every single county in Kentucky. Now, I've kind of thought about it. I haven't found a county yet that doesn't have those. So
Right.
Yeah, there's definitely some counties that have a whole lot more cattle than others. I mean, here in Webster County, we don't have near the amount of cattle that they do in some of the more central parts of the state, but you'll find one sticking its ears out between the corn rows every once in a while. So.
Yeah, talk about what's some we have mostly farmers listening to this podcast, but some aren't cattle guys. What are some challenges y'all face, especially recently, with the drought like now and the different things? What are some different things that folks face in Kentucky, maybe unique to other cattle states? Is there something? What are some challenges faced by cattle farmers in Kentucky?
I think I'm going to take that question from a more national, holistic type approach than just a state, because I don't know that really there's a particular challenge in Kentucky that is not shared in some other areas of the country. But the cattle industry as a whole, I mean, we're in good times right now as far as the price that cattle are bringing at the market. The cattle numbers in the country are the lowest they've been since back in, about 50 or 60 years ago. And, what we're seeing in the challenges, along with weather and different things, input costs. But to me, one of the more challenging things has to do with access to grassland, pasture land, whatever you want to call that, because it seems that a lot of that, I know here in my local area, that basically a majority of the pasture land disappeared many years ago to crop production. When corn prices and bean prices got so high, cattle were cheap at that time, it made more sense for people to put it in row crop production, and it's never come back. And I doubt very seriously that it ever will, to be honest about it, because there's not a whole lot of younger people that want to put in the investment or the time to, take a piece of property and put in the infrastructure and the grass. And, you kind of got to, when you really look at that from an economic standpoint and put a pencil to it, it's pretty hard to make it work out from just a pencil perspective. There's got to be other reasons you want to do that. And, I think that's the same story throughout the U.S. That the loss of farmland, which I know Farm Bureau has an initiative looking at that, and I'm so thankful that you all are doing that. But it's real, and I see it even being more real in the beef production side of things than maybe in crop production in some areas, because crop production is and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but crop production has taken some pasture land out of production. And then when you combine that with all of the urban sprawl and the different things that we see going on that takes agricultural land as a whole out of production, that's a pretty big deal. And, I was just talking to someone the other day and talking about how could a young person, potentially get started in the cattle business if they wanted to, and all the hoops they'd have to jump through. And, dollars and access to capital would be a very huge component, for them to have to look at there.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jeff. When we talk about a good cattle farmer, and I think you'd agree with this, is a good grass farmer. And I know the argument back is, well, yeah, we took a little bit of pasture ground, but it's only the flat pasture ground. You guys can run cows on a hill. You can run them on the mountains, all these different things. Those are harder soil types and harder, more erodible ground to be a good grass farmer. So your stocking rate's lower. And I think that's something that a lot of maybe just the average listener wouldn't truly understand right off. Well, we can put more cattle in East Kentucky if we take some more row crop ground in West Kentucky. And it's just not that simple, and it's not a multiplier that easy to do. And so I totally hear what you're saying. And that's the hard part on an initiative like that. The cattle girl in me always wants to fight for the pasture ground, but ag doesn't need to fight ag. So you're exactly right. How do we find a way to get this thing done so just people can be farming, young people can be farming? And if they want to do both, we've got to figure out a way to get them access to ground one way or the other. So I think you're dead on with that. It's a tough road. And it's something shared by our western states. The western states, they're losing grounds to some of the federal lands. And so they face a whole different problem that we don't even touch over here. So I know you've sat in a lot of really cool meetings. Talk to the listeners about, you've been the Kentucky Cattlemen's Association president this year. So tell us a little bit about your travels and how that's been.
Well, it has been very interesting. I've seen some sites that I probably never would have seen by having this opportunity, but I've been grateful and thankful that I have been able to do that. We've made a few trips into NCBA and different meetings and different places throughout the country, but I guess the one that jumps out to me was I got to go with U.S. Meat Federation earlier this year to Seoul, South Korea, and Tokyo, Japan, and kindly on a, I don't know if you call it a trade mission or a type tour, and we visited with those people over there and got to listen to them tell us how much they love American beef, and they're one of our largest importers, I guess you'd say, that buy American beef, one of our largest customers, and we definitely wanted to keep that relationship going and see what could we do to help them buy more beef. And that was if you've never been to that part of the world, I think it's hard for us, Renee, sitting out here in rural Western Kentucky, to imagine the size of those cities and the number of people and what they have to do to provide housing for all them people and how they get to work in the morning. So that was a unique trip. Made me really appreciate Western Kentucky. I'll just say that.
So what was the most surprising thing? Like were your expectations set well, or was there just no way? The whole thing was kind of mind blowing when you got there and just seeing the culture.
I think my expectations were pretty close. The biggest thing was, I think, just the shock of how many people there were and how much housing that they had to come up with in terms of, you've seen high rise. We're used to seeing high rise apartment or buildings in big cities here, and a lot of that's office type buildings. Well, these were, predominantly housing, apartment buildings. And just one after another on top of one another and 40, 50 stories tall. And that, we're used to seeing people here kind of in the more suburban and the rural settings where we live. And unless you go to New York or Dallas or some big town, you don't see a lot of that. But there, that was predominantly how the population and where the population lived. And you think about they live in their apartments are smaller, and they get up in the morning and they go to work, and their lifestyles are a little bit different as far as the hours, and I think they're looking for. I'm glad to get home. I don't want to leave home. Okay, sometimes I think over there, some of those people were looking for outlets to get out of the apartment buildings, to not be at home as much. Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say there? Not that they didn't like their home, but it was just so condensed and confining. They were looking for outside places to spend more time. Because I know we toured Samsung while we were over there, and Samsung has a big I guess you'd call it concession type business where they do meals. And even in one of their plants there, they would cook and provide meals for their employees up to 3 times a day, or I guess ever how many times you wanted to eat. But, people would get there early. They'd eat breakfast. They could have lunch there, could eat dinner in the evening. And Samsung provided that same type of service for other businesses, as well as a lot of those apartment buildings have the cafeteria type, whatever you would call that for those people, because most of them, they have very small kitchens and, not like what we're used to having here in time. They don't spend a lot of time at home. So having meals prepared that they can just come in, eat quickly, or take with them, that was a big deal over there. So
wow, makes you really love your home, and probably we're happy to get home, get back to the farm, and get back to regular work.
Yes, I've come to realize that probably anything that's going to take me another 16-hour flight to see, I'll watch it on Discovery Channel.
Oh, you all go to that. Yeah. Well, talk about, I mean, we ask really everybody, why do you love this? What is it? You've had a lot of knowledge we've heard just today, and you're very passionate about your industry. What is it about it? Why do you love farming? Why do you fight for it in the Cattleman Association and working through that and different organizations? But what is it about it that you just really love?
I guess when it boils down to it, it's about passion. I think I have always had a passion for livestock and agriculture in general by growing up on the farm, seeing what it takes, watching newborn animals, whether it be horses or cattle or whatever kind of livestock, come into this world and help nurture them. And, I guess God just placed a passion inside of me that's what I wanted to be involved in my whole life. And I never was really in a position that I was able to solely make a living just off the farm and cattle. We had a construction business for a number of years, but that allowed me the opportunity to, I think, see many aspects and sides of the cattle business and agriculture and be involved in many different things and have the opportunity to volunteer time and go places and kind of be a spokesman or a proponent for agriculture. And to me, I think people have to realize whether we're raising livestock, soybeans, corn, whatever it is, it's bigger than any one of us. It's bigger than what we are individually doing each day on our farms. We're either producing food or fuel for the world, basically. And I think about, and this goes back to my trip to Tokyo and Seoul. I think about those people there that depend on someone like myself or us in agriculture to get out, farm the land, and produce the food to help feed people that live in places like that. And, I'm grateful for what they do, their livelihood. Let's say, I know at Samsung, a lot of those is technology, producing computer chips. Well, every one of us now have some type of computer chip we rely on each and every day, probably even to do this podcast here. Mm-hmm. So their role is important too. But every one of those people have to have something to eat. And it's our role in agriculture to be as efficient and produce as much as we can to make that possible for the masses throughout the world. So,
Absolutely. Jeff, I got one more question just because it's fresh on my mind. You've got another generation on your farm. You're getting to see that passion. You've got some grandkids starting to show, correct? So how does that feel, seeing those kids getting involved with the animals in front of people, not just at your house, but now in a show ring and having the courage to do that? How's that feel?
So I guess I'm a hard learner, Renee, and God's tested me the second time around. I think I failed maybe miserably the first time with my children on necessarily doing the best job of teaching them, because at that time, I was in a hurry. I was trying to make a living. I thought everything had to be done a certain way and it had to be done quick. And I'll admit, I probably didn't take as much time allowing them to learn and be a part of the operation as I should have. So with this second round, with these granddaughters, the good Lord's given me the ability to sit back and say, you know what, let them mess it up. We'll fix it. If it takes a little longer, we'll finish it tomorrow. But letting them be involved, and I've got, and both of them are at the barn every day. The oldest one, it doesn't get too dirty for her, whether we're preg checking cows or doctoring a sick cow. They're both right there, and they want to see and they want to learn. And some days they're going to be vets, some days they're going to be cardiologists. They don't know, but the one thing that comes back every day is they're going to be on the farm, or they're going to have a farm, and they're going to have some livestock. So to me, that's pretty special to know that like you said, that next generation that I guess you'd say our second, mine and Michelle's second generation is probably going to be the ones that keeps the farm going on where we are. So
I love to hear that. Sometimes, people hear about maybe the kids aren't coming back to the farm, and it's hard from a farmer's perspective. You want to almost be like, oh, come on, bring them back. But there's 5 of us, and, myself, I'm the only one truly farming. My brother's 18, so jury's out on him. But, 2 out of 5's really not bad. 2 grandkids out of the group's not bad. I think you just got to take what makes sense and keep everybody happy and find the ones that have that passion. And it sounds like those kids have it. And it's cool because your kids are still very passionate about ag. They just don't work directly in it every day. Well, I guess Nolan does a little bit now in the 4-H world. But anyway, I think it's neat having the grandkids there too.
It's awesome, and I just thank God that I've had the ability to enjoy grandchildren and be at an age where we could do some things together and help them, explore the passions that the Lord's put in them. And I look forward to continuing to work with them. And so I told you early on, and I'll tell you this little story, but we were in the Red Angus business predominantly. But if you come visit our farm, you'll see some other animals walking around out here. There might be a white-faced heifer walking around that the youngest granddaughter. That was the only way we kind of got her involved with the cattle. She told me one day, she said, she might show a white-faced one. Well, so guess what? We got a white-faced one walking around out here. And the older granddaughter, she just always loved those big floppy ears. So you know what? She led a Santa Cruz heifer around this year, and there's 2 white Brahman heifers walking around in the field down front. And Michelle said, why are you doing this? I said, you know what? If it piques their interest and it keeps them involved,
yep,
we're going to do it. And there's sometimes there's stuff more important than just the reputation of we only do one thing, I believe. So
absolutely. Now, if there doesn't show the love of a grandfather to their grandchild, buying some ear cattle in Kentucky and having them out in the front field, that is love right there. That is showing love. Well, hey, I cannot thank you enough, Jeff. I want to give you a chance, though, and I'm apologize. I don't even know this. Do you guys have a website, or do you market just private treaty? How do you guys market your bulls and heifers? We always when people talk about their farm, we get inquiries because they want to see more or reach out. Do y'all have a website or a Facebook or anything y'all do that on?
We do. We have both, as a matter of fact. Our webpage is www.diamondpcattle.com, and then we also have a Facebook page, Diamond P Cattle, as well. So I don't know that I do the best job of keeping it updated, but I try to keep some stuff on there, and especially when it comes time of year when we're have animals to market, whether it's beef or seed stock animals, bulls, replacement heifers. So yes, that's you can find us there.
Perfect. And then I've got a note. We'll plug the KCA website as well, Kentucky Cattlemen's Association. So if anybody wants to hear your farewell after your year of service in that president's role, they'll have that information on that website. So Jeff, I really just can't thank you enough. I've enjoyed having you. That is probably the biggest thing I do. They laugh at me is remind people, even though I live in the mecca of all things Central Kentucky and cattle, I do not ever quit reminding people that there are cattle west of I-65. And there are a lot of us over there. So there's some good cattle people coming out of West Kentucky. So I love having you on there. I've seen you across the state, and you're doing great work for the cattlemen. And I just appreciate it so much.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be on here today. I'll have one final plug for the Cattlemen's Association, because it is a true association. It's made up of producers and people that support the cattle industry, and you don't have to own a cow to be a member of the Cattlemen's Association. We would just love to have you. All I say is you got to enjoy eating beef. So if you enjoy a good steak, you know what? Just as a consumer, you're helping the producers by being a member of our association, because it takes all the consumers and the producers as well to keep this industry going and growing. So
very good.
Fantastic. Perfect. Last plug. I love it. We had a pork one just a couple days ago, and sometimes we just got to remind people we got to eat all the proteins. Let's give it a fair shake. So I love it.
Exactly.
Well, thank
Exactly.
you. Well, thank you so much, Jeff, and thank you, listeners. Don't forget to subscribe to our larger podcast, Kentucky Farm Life, and we will see you next time on Between the Rows.